Hi everyone, this is the video that goes along with the Q&A tutorial about smoke. So just to start off with, I'm going to make the background of my canvas black because smoke, for the most part, against a light background you can't really see it. Like if it's a bright sunny day and there's a fire, you can see dark smoke really well. But light smoke tends to blend in with other stuff. So since this is a close-up drawing of smoke, we're going to do it against a black background. So you can see I'm kind of starting off by just drawing in the general shape that I'm going to want for the smoke. I know that I'm going to be softening a lot of things up, and I'm going to be using the blend tool a lot to create smooth transitions. So don't be especially concerned with how nice the strokes are or how pretty they are. It's just about getting that shape for the composition you want. You can see I'm kind of drawing it, if you imagine it sort of like stretched taffy, or maybe like a translucent curtain that is billowing in the wind. I'm trying to focus on two edges that are moving through space and trying to keep it so it feels three-dimensional. So it's important when you're first drawing in these shapes for the smoke to not put down too many lines or to put any pigment down too heavily in a single area, because you want the smoke to feel translucent. And when it comes time to blend it together, those areas are going to be where you can see through it and feel that it's not a hard, heavy object in space. So my focus, for the most part, while I'm drawing the plumes of smoke moving away from the source, is just kind of thinking of it as like a tapestry or like a kind of a stretched taffy that moves through space three-dimensionally. Because you don't just want to think about the smoke in two-dimensional terms. I mean, you could if you wanted to, I guess. But if you want a realistic illusion, you want to think about it in terms of 3D space and how that smoke is going to be moving away from you and towards you. And because the way the smoke moves from wherever that fire is, because as it moves away it curls with the wind, you can kind of draw the path in to kind of set yourself up the same way you would if you were doing a figure drawing. You would do a center line to get the idea for the whole gesture before you started digging into the drawing. Here you can just start off by trying to get that main line the smoke is going to follow as it moves away from whatever the lit source is. Okay, so now you can see I'm using the softest brush there is. This is the soft round, turned as soft as possible, with the strength turned up pretty high. Usually I'm switching between 60 and 70, and sometimes I'll go as high as 90, just depending on how much you want to pull the pigment. So while I'm using the blender to smooth areas out, I'm also using it to connect the sides of that, that bendy taffy again, and use the strokes of the blender, not just to smooth things out and draw those edges, but to also pull everything in the direction you want it to move in. How it twists through space is going to dictate how the smoke comes out when we're done. Everything kind of builds upon that main shape. Because smoke can take so many different shapes, you can pretty much design it however you want, as long as you build it around this idea of that central curving main smoke that all comes down into the source. As long as you've got that there, you can pretty much do whatever you want with it. So just use it as a chance to move things around, and you don't have to, if something doesn't feel right, just change it, because it's smoke. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter if it's billowing in this direction or that direction, because how the wind is moving usually isn't too precise. Often while I'm painting things like smoke, or it's the same kind of, the process is similar with cloth or with some kinds of water, things like that. But when I'm painting like this, a lot of times I'll think of it more in terms of sculpture than drawing, because rather than specifically focusing on how I want the two-dimensional shapes to be working on the page, I'm just thinking of it in 3D space and kind of trying to move this sculpture in my mind with the blender. You may notice that I'm keeping the edges kind of hard as far as the outside of the main shape is concerned, but that's just because, so as smoke moves away from the source, it tends to go from sharp to soft, because as the smoke dissipates more, you lose the edges and it all becomes kind of fuzzy. But since I'm going to be designing this shape, I'm keeping it sharp now, so I know I have a good idea of what the smoke is doing, and then it's very easy when we get towards the end. We're going to get a harder brush out with a more rough edge and just start dissipating all the smoke. So when it comes to painting the actual pattern of the smoke, I tend to think less about it in terms of smoke as this object that is going up and curling through space. And I think more about how trying to paint the lightness of the air and kind of how the air is moving in and out in whatever that small space is where the smoke is moving about. Well, it doesn't have to be small, but in this case, because we're painting a small scale smoke, it's a small space. So now that the main shape is in, I'm going to start softening the top, and kind of as I work my way down, I'll soften less and less. But as the smoke moves away from the source, it dissipates more and it loses its sharp edges. So as you're looking around the plumes, just if something feels too hard, soften it. And I'm using a rougher brush. There's a few different ones. They're all basic brushes that come with Photoshop, but like the 14, the 27, and the 59 are all rough enough where you can still blend smoothly with them, but it doesn't leave the edges too clean. You may actually notice that this is not the same smoke picture from the one in the magazine. I haven't, you may have also noticed that I haven't really recorded videos for a lot of my tutorials before, if only because I get a little bit apprehensive about, you know, having to deal with the new software and all that stuff. So I did not record the screen correctly the first time, and I just had to do it again. So if you're wondering why this design looks different from the one in the magazine, it's because I just did the other one, and then the video didn't work, and so now I'm recording this. So as you're blending in the top areas, I would still say to primarily just focus on composition, because smoke, the way that it moves is so abstract. You have the freedom to, if you don't like an area, just mess around with it more until the shapes start to feel nicer. And if you like an area, you know, just polish it off, get the edges right, and then move out from there. Alright, so now you can kind of see how the final smoke shape is coming together. If any area feels too dense, of course, you know, you can always take the eraser to it. Just lightly erase areas if you want it to be a little more translucent, or you can mess with the opacity of the layer and make the whole thing more translucent if you want. Depending on the effect you're going for, you know, you may want to have more subtle smoke. But because the whole tutorial is about smoke, I'm not really gonna make it any more translucent than that. Alright, I hope you guys learned something. Alright, well I think this is the end of the smoke tutorial. So hopefully you guys got something out of it, or at the very least enjoyed your time painting a little bit. So have a good day.